There are moments in life when an unseen heaviness follows us, an inexplicable shadow that dims our joy, our strength, our very sense of peace. Ancient traditions have called it the evil eye, a force born of envy, fear, or malice that seems to drain vitality and disturb the spirit. But what if beyond superstition, this shadow revealed something profoundly spiritual? A mirror reflecting the hidden imbalance between soul and soul. Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, was not a man of superstition. He was a man of faith, humble, prayerful, guided entirely by his devotion to Christ. When he spoke of unseen forces, he never framed them as curses cast from others, but as vibrations of thought and emotion. In one of his readings, he explained that every human being is both a transmitter and receiver of energy. Thoughts, he said, are things, living currents that affect not only the mind, but the body, the home, even the air around us. To Cayce, what many called the evil eye was, in essence, a distortion of divine energy, the misuse of the creative power of thought. When someone holds jealousy or resentment toward another, they unknowingly project a frequency of discord. And when that frequency finds resonance in someone whose spiritual defenses are weak, through fear, guilt, or unhealed wounds, it takes root. It becomes a form of energetic sickness, not inflicted upon us, but received through our own openness to fear. Christ himself spoke of this mystery in a simple yet eternal truth. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. In this teaching, Jesus revealed the essence of protection, purity of vision. When our inner sight remains fixed upon God, when we see the world through love instead of fear, no darkness can enter. The so-called evil eye loses all its power because the soul aligned with divine light becomes transparent to it. It passes through without anchoring like wind through glass. Cayce often urged that protection is not found in charms or rituals, but in vibration, in aligning one's thought with the Christ pattern. Keep your mind stayed upon him, he said, for the mind is the builder, and that which it dwells upon it becomes. To dwell upon fear invites fear. To dwell upon love, healing, and gratitude invites divine light. And this light, this Christ vibration, is the only true armor against any form of negativity. But how does one practically remove the influence of such energy once it has taken hold? Cayce's answer was always the same. Cleanse the inner temple first. Begin with prayer, not pleading but communion. Speak to God not as a distant deity, but as the living presence within. Confess any resentment, any anger, any jealousy harbored toward others, for these are the gateways through which the energy of fear enters. Replace each emotion with its divine opposite, forgiveness for hatred, peace for turmoil, blessing for envy. He recommended also the use of physical means, salt baths, sunlight, fresh air, not as superstitions, but as ways to harmonize body and spirit. For, as he explained, the body is a temple of energy, and cleansing it restores spiritual rhythm. A simple, prayerful bath made in silence and gratitude can become a sacred act of purification when the mind is centered in Christ. And above all, he reminded, never fear. Fear is the invitation that opens the door to darkness. Faith is the key that closes it forever. For the one who walks in love, there is no evil eye. There is only the gaze of God, eternal, merciful, and radiant with life. To understand how the so-called evil eye operates, Cayce often reminded his followers that we live in a universe of vibration. Every thought, every feeling, every spoken word releases a wave into the unseen realms. These waves mingle, intersect, and shape the reality we experience. The evil eye, then, is not a mysterious curse hurled through the air. It is a thought form, a projection of discordant energy born from emotions that have forgotten love. In one of his meditative insights, Cayce described the aura, the subtle field of light that surrounds every living being. He explained that this luminous field is not symbolic, but real, composed of the radiations of the body and the emanations of the soul. When a person prays, forgives, and loves, the aura brightens and expands, vibrating in harmony with divine light. But when one succumbs to anger, envy, or despair, the field contracts, creating pockets of shadow. It is within these dimmed vibrations that negative forces, thoughts of others or echoes of our own fear, can find entry. Jesus knew this law intimately. He often withdrew to pray alone, not to escape people, but to renew his vibration in oneness with the Father. He told his disciples, "Be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." To overcome in this sense meant to rise above the frequencies of fear and discord that rule the lower mind. In his radiant state of union, no darkness could touch him. His very presence healed because it was pure coherence, the vibration of divine love made flesh. Cayce taught that each of us can walk this same path of protection through attunement. When we pray sincerely, when we forgive from the heart, when we choose compassion over judgment, we tune ourselves to the Christ frequency, and within that vibration, the destructive power of envy dissolves like mist in sunlight. No incantation, no ritual, no amulet holds greater power than a heart that radiates love. He also spoke of the importance of service as protection. When one feels afflicted by negative forces, the instinct is often to withdraw, to hide, to defend. But Cayce suggested the opposite: to give, to bless, to serve someone in need. "You cannot curse while you bless," he said. The act of giving immediately reverses the current of energy, transforming the receiver into a channel of divine flow. Service cleanses the aura more effectively than any charm, for it restores the natural movement of love outward, the true rhythm of the soul. In daily life, he encouraged practices that align with both spiritual and physical renewal. Begin the morning with gratitude. Speak aloud a simple affirmation such as, "Let my mind be one with Christ today. Let only love and healing flow through me." This conscious alignment sets the tone for the entire day, surrounding the individual with what Cayce called the mantle of light. He warned, however, that the greatest danger was not the envy of others, but our own resentment. The energy we send is always the energy we live within. Thus, if we feel injured or judged, the task is not to retaliate but to forgive, instantly, sincerely, and without condition. Jesus' words from the cross were not a symbol, but a spiritual law. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." In that moment, he severed the chain of karmic energy that binds one soul to another through hatred. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of liberation. It breaks the vibration of the so-called evil eye by refusing to meet darkness with darkness. To forgive is to affirm that love alone is real, and that every shadow is merely an absence of its light. When we forgive, we return to our source, the divine heartbeat of creation itself. And so Cayce would remind us, cleanse the heart, renew the mind, sanctify the body through kindness, prayer, and service. In doing so, you do not simply remove the influence of negativity, you transform it. You become a mirror of divine grace through which no darkness can persist. Because in truth, the evil eye has no power over the one who sees through the eyes of Christ. There is a deeper mystery behind this teaching, one that Cayce often revealed gently, as if guiding the soul to remember something ancient and familiar. He said that no soul could ever be harmed by another unless it first allowed itself to forget its oneness with God. Every vibration of harm, every shadow of fear, exists only in the realm of separation. That moment when we forget we are children of the light. Thus, the remedy for any dark influence is not defense, but remembrance. He once explained that each person is surrounded by an atmosphere of their own making, a sphere of influence shaped by lifetimes of thought and emotion. Within this atmosphere, spiritual forces move freely, attracted by the quality of one's vibration. Angels and divine helpers are drawn to love, gratitude, and faith. Lower entities born of fear and confusion are drawn to anger and despair. The evil eye, he said, is nothing more than the temporary attraction of such discordant forces, which lose all hold the moment one recenters in prayer. Jesus illustrated this same law through his life. When the multitudes pressed upon him, when hostility gathered, when betrayal loomed, he did not resist in fear. He lifted his heart to the Father and said, "Thy will be done." This surrender was not weakness. It was mastery. By aligning perfectly with divine will, he remained untouchable, radiant, serene. His peace was not dependent on circumstance, because it was born of direct communion with God. Cayce encouraged every soul to cultivate that same communion through the simplest of means, quiet time with the Creator. He called it entering the silence. It was in silence that the soul regains its equilibrium, that the waves of thought settle, and that the inner voice of the Spirit can be heard. He said, "In the stillness of your heart, the Lord speaks. Listen, and know that you are never alone." In this sacred stillness, the so-called evil eye is revealed for what it truly is, a misunderstanding of energy, a call to awaken compassion even for those who may wish us harm. For no one sends out darkness who is not themselves in pain. When we recognize this, the heart softens, and we begin to pray not only for our protection but for their healing. This prayer, born of love, transforms the entire field. It turns the vibration of fear into an offering of light. Cayce reminded his students that the soul who forgives liberates two beings at once, the one who was hurt and the one who caused harm. Every act of forgiveness restores a fragment of divine harmony to the world, and in that restoration, we rise. He often spoke, too, of the law of grace. Karma, he said, is not punishment, but balance, the soul's way of learning through experience. But grace is love's intervention, the moment when a sincere turning toward God cancels the weight of past mistakes. If we have ever projected envy or resentment ourselves, the same grace that heals us from others' darkness also redeems what we have sent. For as we forgive, we are forgiven. Cayce viewed the evil eye not as a fixed curse, but as a teacher, a reminder that energy follows thought, that our inner world shapes the outer one. Each encounter with envy or malice becomes a sacred opportunity to practice divine remembrance. It calls us to anchor ourselves more deeply in the vibration of Christ, to test our faith, and to prove that love is indeed stronger than fear. Jesus demonstrated this law perfectly. Where others saw enemies, he saw souls in confusion. Where others felt hatred, he responded with mercy. His life was the pure antidote to the evil eye, the embodiment of divine love that reflects every arrow of fear back as light. And so Cayce would gently say, "There is no evil in the eyes of love." When we look upon another soul with the vision of Christ, we no longer see threat, we see God. The illusion of harm dissolves, and the light that passes through our gaze becomes a blessing. Thus, the truest way to get rid of the evil eye is to stop believing in separation. Remember who you are, a living flame of the Creator's own love. No darkness can extinguish that fire. No thought of envy can pierce a heart filled with compassion. For the one who walks in divine remembrance, every shadow becomes a messenger, reminding the soul that light was never lost, only forgotten. And in that remembrance, healing begins, quietly, naturally, eternally. Cayce often spoke of the journey from knowledge to embodiment, the sacred passage from understanding divine truth to living it in every breath. To rid oneself of the effects of the so-called evil eye, he taught, is not merely to pray for protection, but to become the prayer. It is to live so fully in the awareness of God's love that one's presence itself becomes a sanctuary, a field of peace through which no harmful vibration can pass. He described this transformation as the awakening of the Christ pattern within. Every soul, he said, carries this pattern, the living blueprint of divine perfection planted by the Creator. It is the same spirit that moved through Jesus, the same essence that heals, forgives, and uplifts. When we awaken this Christ pattern through devotion and daily discipline, the aura begins to radiate a steady brilliance that nothing outside of God can dim. Cayce's readings often reminded seekers that thoughts and emotions are not private events, but spiritual currents that ripple through the great ocean of consciousness. Each act of kindness strengthens the world's vibration of healing. Each moment of bitterness feeds the collective shadow. Thus, when we release jealousy, fear, and judgment, we are not only freeing ourselves, but cleansing the atmosphere of humanity. The evil eye loses its ground because the collective field of envy is purified by love. Jesus pointed to this collective power of love when he said, "You are the light of the world." He did not speak in metaphor. He was revealing a cosmic truth. Every soul that chooses forgiveness becomes a lamp shining in the unseen, and every such light weakens the influence of darkness across the earth. Cayce would sometimes speak of spiritual hygiene with the same care one gives to physical cleanliness. He urged his listeners to examine their daily thoughts as they would their physical health. Just as the body requires nourishment and rest, the soul requires spiritual maintenance, prayer, meditation, and quiet reflection. He would say, "Begin and end each day with the remembrance of God, and nothing of darkness will remain with you." He also recommended surrounding oneself with beauty and harmony, music that uplifts, words that inspire, friendships that nurture truth. Because the environment mirrors the inner state, one must consciously choose to dwell among vibrations that remind the heart of love. Even a flower placed near one's bedside, he said, could serve as a silent prayer of beauty, radiating harmony into the room. And always he emphasized the power of Scripture. Reading even a few verses from the Gospels each morning aligns the mind with the rhythm of divine truth. The words of Christ are not merely teachings, they are vibrations. To dwell upon them is to draw that same frequency into one's life. Cayce himself would begin each day with the Lord's Prayer, allowing its meaning to settle into every cell of his being before opening his eyes to the world. He taught that when one lives in this state of continual remembrance, the world no longer appears as a place of threats, but as a field of divine interaction. Every encounter, even those that seem hostile, becomes an invitation to express God's love. The so-called evil eye then becomes powerless, for the one who has learned to see Christ in all faces cannot be touched by the illusion of separation. Jesus embodied this when he walked among those who doubted and mocked him, when he healed those who cursed him, when he loved without condition. His heart was the sun of the world. Its rays dissolved every shadow of fear. Cayce believed this same light lives in every soul, dormant perhaps, but waiting to be kindled through humility and faith. He said, "You protect yourself best by blessing those who do not yet know the light. That is the essence of spiritual invincibility. When we answer darkness with blessing, we reverse the flow of energy itself. The projection of harm becomes a wave of grace, returning to its source transformed. To live this way is not easy. It demands constant awareness, humility, and courage. It means forgiving again and again, praying even when wounded, loving without expectation of reward. Yet in that surrender, one discovers what Cayce called the peace that heals the world. And so to truly remove the evil eye is to remove the fear of it. To remember that the soul, made in the image of God, cannot be cursed. It can only forget its light. When it remembers, when it turns its gaze again toward divine love, even the darkness must bow, because nothing of shadow can stand before the one who walks in the light of Christ. And so the path of release from the so-called evil eye does not lead outward to some battle against invisible enemies, but inward to the holy place where the soul meets its Maker. There, in the quiet temple of the heart, every chain is broken, every fear undone, every wound remembered only as a passage toward grace. Cayce often said that no prayer is lost, no act of love wasted, for all are recorded in the soul as living energy. Each moment of faith builds an invisible fortress of light around the being, not to isolate but to radiate. When Christ said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you," he was offering more than comfort. He was transmitting a vibration that remains alive even now. It is the same peace that Cayce described as the ultimate protection, not a wall that keeps darkness out, but a light that makes darkness impossible. For darkness cannot exist where light is remembered. Cayce urged each seeker to cultivate that peace as a daily practice, not an occasional refuge. Begin the morning with gratitude, not merely spoken, but felt. Give thanks for breath, for the earth beneath your feet, for the people who cross your path. Gratitude shifts the vibration instantly, lifting the soul into alignment with divine current. And in that higher vibration, lower thoughts cannot attach. He also spoke of the healing power of blessing. When you sense that someone looks upon you with envy or malice, silently bless them. Do not resist, do not fear. Speak in your heart. May the light of Christ fill your soul and bring you peace. That single thought releases both souls from bondage. For blessing is the language of God. It transforms energy where words cannot. And remember, protection is not isolation, it is union. The more we connect with others through compassion, the stronger our light becomes. Cayce saw humanity as one great body of spirit. When one cell heals, the whole body brightens. Thus, every loving thought, every sincere prayer, every act of kindness contributes to the collective restoration of creation. The evil eye, envy, malice, all these are symptoms of forgetfulness. But when even one soul remembers, light spreads silently through the world like dawn through mist. Jesus' life was the perfect demonstration of this remembrance. He saw beyond appearances, beyond injury and illusion. He knew that each human being, no matter how lost, carried the seed of divine beauty. And because he saw that beauty, he called it forth. That is the highest form of protection, to see the truth so clearly that falsehood has no power. When we see others as God sees them, the evil eye turns to grace. Cayce encouraged the daily use of simple affirmations, spoken not as repetition, but as realization. He often recommended the phrase, "Let my body, mind and soul be channels of thy light, O Lord." These words, when felt deeply, align the entire being with divine rhythm. The body relaxes, the mind clears, the soul expands, and in that expansion, all foreign vibrations dissolve. He would end his prayers by resting in silence, knowing that the true work of spirit happens beyond words. In that stillness, the Christ within rises, and the peace of God becomes tangible. This is not imagination, it is spiritual law. The soul attuned to divine light cannot harbor fear. And without fear, no curse, no shadow, no evil eye can find form. In this truth lies the eternal comfort that Cayce sought to share. You are not a victim of unseen powers. You are a vessel of divine energy. Your every thought can heal or harm, bless or burden. Choose always to bless. For in blessing, you draw nearer to the heart of Christ, and in that heart, you are untouchable. So if ever you feel watched by envy or weighed down by unseen heaviness, do not tremble. Close your eyes. Breathe. Call upon the presence that never leaves you. Say within yourself, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Feel that truth not as hope, but as certainty. Let the light rise through you, expanding outward, blessing the one who once seemed to harm you. In that moment, the illusion dissolves, and all that remains is love. Because in the eyes of God there is no evil. There is only the forgotten child, longing to remember the light. And through you, through your forgiveness and your faith, that light is remembered again. For the one who walks in Christ's love carries a gaze so pure, so steady, that every shadow bows before it, not in defeat but in awakening. And in that awakening, the world is healed. They say you wake up but your body refuses to move. You try to scream but no sound comes out. Your eyes are open but what you see doesn't feel like the world you know. Some call it sleep paralysis. Others call it a demonic presence sitting on your chest. But Edgar Cayce, known as the sleeping prophet, described something deeper, something that bridges science and the spirit. He said that in those moments, the soul is not fully back in the body. Between sleep and wakefulness, you are suspended between two dimensions, the physical and the spiritual, and what you feel pressing upon you is not always a nightmare. Sometimes it's your own spirit struggling to return to the flesh. Other times, it's something else trying to make contact. As you watch this video, stay until the end, because what Cayce revealed about these mysterious awakenings might forever change how you see your nights, your dreams, and your soul. Comment below if you've ever experienced waking up paralyzed, unable to move or speak, yet completely aware. Your story might help someone understand what has been haunting them for years. When the night falls and silence wraps around your room, your mind begins to drift between worlds. Your body sinks into stillness, yet your consciousness floats somewhere else, suspended in a space where reality bends. Then suddenly, you awaken. But you can't move. You can't even whisper. Your body is frozen, your breath heavy, and a strange presence seems to hover in the dark. Many call it sleep paralysis, Science explains it as the brain waking before the body does. But Edgar Cayce saw beyond the surface. In his readings, he described the human soul as something that travels when we sleep, leaving the physical body to explore higher realms of existence. And when the soul returns too abruptly, or when fear grips the body, this separation can be felt as paralysis. You are awake but not entirely here. Your spirit is halfway between heaven and earth. Cayce said that during sleep, the soul often leaves through what he called the silver cord, a spiritual connection linking the physical and the eternal. In that state, the body is still, but the soul is active, learning, observing, even meeting with other souls. It's a sacred process, invisible but real. When people wake too fast before the spirit fully re-enters, their consciousness struggles. That's when they feel trapped inside their own body. He explained that this phenomenon isn't evil by itself, but fear and spiritual confusion can attract negative energies. Those vibrations feed off panic. In moments like that, your fear becomes a doorway, and what you perceive as a dark presence might be the echo of your own spiritual imbalance. According to Cayce, every night, the soul renews itself through divine contact. But when your life is disconnected from faith, prayer, and peace, the return of your spirit to the body becomes chaotic. You wake in a storm of fear rather than in the calm of divine harmony. He warned that this paralysis can be a sign, not of demonic control, but of spiritual neglect. A signal that your soul is calling you back to the awareness of God's presence. When the physical and spiritual bodies fall out of rhythm, the soul trembles at the border of two realities. It is not death. It is a reminder of how fragile the bridge between heaven and earth truly is. So when you wake in the dark, unable to move, Cayce would tell you, do not fight it. Do not scream in terror. Breathe and remember that your soul is still connected. Whisper a prayer. Call upon the name of Jesus. The fear will fade and peace will return. The moment you invoke the divine, the vibration shifts, because darkness cannot stand in the presence of light. What paralyzes you is not the night, but the lack of awareness that you are never alone. You are always held by the Spirit of God, even when your body lies frozen. If you've ever experienced this silent terror, take a moment to like this video and share your experience in the comments. Many people live in fear of something that is actually a profound spiritual event. Your voice can help others find understanding and faith instead of panic. And don't forget to subscribe. We're going deep into Cayce's lost teachings about dreams, the soul, and the thin veil between worlds. Cayce believed that what science calls sleep paralysis is often a moment when the soul is closer to God than at any other time during the night. Because when the physical senses are muted and the body is still, the spirit is more sensitive to the unseen. He said that each of us is more than flesh. We are energy, vibration, and consciousness, moving through a divine current. And sometimes that current is interrupted by fear, guilt, or the weight of our daily struggles. When that happens, the soul's journey becomes turbulent. We wake in confusion, trapped between planes, feeling the dense heaviness of the physical while still perceiving the subtle vibrations of the spiritual. In those few seconds of paralysis, you are touching eternity. You are aware not only of your body, but also of the invisible world that always surrounds it. That's why some people report seeing shadows, hearing voices, or feeling a presence near them. Cayce explained that the moment between waking and sleep is the most sensitive doorway of the mind. The subconscious is open, the conscious mind is alert, and both worlds overlap. What you perceive in those seconds might be your own fears taking shape, but it might also be the residue of spiritual encounters that your conscious mind can't yet process. Cayce warned that obsession with these experiences can attract energies of the same vibration. If you expect darkness, you will find it, but if you fill your nights with prayer and gratitude, your spirit aligns with higher realms, and the fear dissolves like mist before the sun. He also said that people who practice meditation before sleep create harmony between the soul and the body. This harmony prevents the shock of sudden re-entry that causes paralysis. When you fall asleep in peace, your spirit travels freely and returns smoothly. The experience of waking becomes sacred rather than terrifying. Cayce taught that the key to controlling these moments lies in vibration, in what you carry within your heart. Because every emotion is energy, and every thought shapes the reality around you. Fear tightens the cord between worlds, while faith releases it. Those who cultivate faith find that even when they can't move, they are calm. They feel surrounded by light instead of trapped in darkness. Think about it. Maybe those nights weren't meant to frighten you. Maybe they were meant to wake you spiritually, to remind you that life doesn't end when your body rests, that the soul keeps moving, learning, connecting with realms beyond what the eyes can see. Cayce said that these experiences are not punishments, but invitations, calls to remember your divine origin. Every time you return from sleep, you are returning from a spiritual journey. What you bring back depends on the state of your heart. If you sleep with bitterness, you wake with nightmares. If you rest in prayer, you wake in peace. The difference between terror and revelation is not in the event itself, but in your vibration when it happens. Cayce once said that fear is the absence of faith in motion. When you awaken in paralysis, your mind reacts with panic because it doesn't understand what your spirit already knows. The soul is returning from a dimension where time and matter don't exist. It's passing through the same subtle layers that connect you to God. In that instant, fear acts like a curtain blocking the light. But the moment you remember who you truly are, a divine being clothed in flesh, the darkness loses power. Cayce taught that the human body is a temple and the spirit is its high priest. When that harmony is disturbed, even for seconds, the body becomes a cage instead of a vessel. That's why prayer before sleep is not superstition, it's preparation. It aligns the mind, body and soul so that the journey through the night is safe and the return is gentle. He explained that angels and spiritual guides are constantly near us, especially when we sleep. They help the soul remember its divine purpose. But when we carry bitterness or hatred into the night, those higher influences cannot reach us easily. Negative emotions create a spiritual fog, and in that fog we become aware only of the shadows of our own making. The dark presence people often feel during paralysis, Cayce said, is rarely an outside demon. It is the magnified reflection of our own inner chaos. When you feel trapped and terrified, you're confronting the energy you have not yet forgiven. Forgiveness, he said, is light. It burns away the dense vibrations that hold you down. That's why invoking the name of Jesus brings instant relief, not because it magically removes the fear, but because it reminds the soul of its divine authority. Cayce's readings often return to one central idea: consciousness survives every experience. Even in moments that feel like death, when the body is frozen, when time seems to stop, awareness continues. That is proof that you are not your body. You are the consciousness observing it. And the more you live with that awareness, the less power fear will have over you. What paralyzes most people is not the event, but the illusion of separation. You are never outside the reach of the divine. Even in the stillest, darkest moment, the Spirit of God breathes through you. The paralysis is not punishment. It's an invitation to awaken. Every time you close your eyes, your soul rehearses the journey it will one day take at death, leaving the body, exploring the spiritual plane, and then returning. The difference is that now you wake up again. These small rehearsals are meant to teach you that there is nothing to fear when the moment of real transition comes. Cayce said that understanding the nature of sleep and dreams prepares the soul for eternity. So when you find yourself unable to move, remember this: you are being shown, through experience, that the soul is immortal. The fear you feel is the resistance of the ego, not the truth of your spirit. Cayce also warned that those who mock or deny the spiritual side of life often face the most disturbing experiences during sleep, not as punishment, but as an inevitable awakening. The soul cannot live forever in denial of its own nature. The more a person clings to material explanations alone, the more violent the shock becomes when the spiritual reality breaks through. That's why some people wake in terror while others wake in peace. It's not random, it's resonance. Cayce said that our nightly experiences reflect the condition of our inner world. If you fill your mind with chaos, that chaos follows you into the spiritual plane. If you cultivate calmness, prayer, and gratitude, your nights become luminous, filled with presence instead of panic. He encouraged people to pray before sleeping, not as a ritual of fear, but as an act of alignment, because prayer tunes the soul to the frequency of God's peace. When that happens, even if your body awakens before your spirit is fully anchored, you feel only serenity. Many of Cayce's followers shared that when they prayed before bed, even experiences of paralysis became moments of divine contact. They reported feeling a warm light surrounding them, a presence that comforted instead of frightened. The body still couldn't move, but the fear was gone. Cayce said that was the Christ vibration, the awareness that perfect love casts out all fear. If you look closely, you'll notice a pattern. Everything in these experiences points back to one truth: your spirit is more real than your body. Sleep paralysis, dreams, even visions, they are all windows through which eternity looks at you. Cayce wanted people to stop running from these moments and start learning from them. He said, "Fear closes the door, faith opens it. When you wake paralyzed, instead of begging for it to end, whisper within your mind, 'Thy will be done.'" That phrase aligns your energy with God's flow, breaking the hold of darkness instantly. What feels like terror becomes worship. What felt like a nightmare becomes revelation. Take this seriously. Every time you rise from sleep, you are being given another chance to remember your divine nature. The separation between the physical and the spiritual is not a wall, it's a veil, thin as breath. Sleep paralysis is just a moment when that veil is lifted too soon. Instead of seeing it as something to fear, see it as a teacher. It shows you how fragile your attachment to the material really is, and how powerful the unseen truly remains. If you've ever felt trapped between worlds, you have tasted what it means to be eternal. Cayce reminded people that God never abandons the soul in darkness. What we call night terrors are often cries from the soul asking to be remembered. He taught that when you invite God into your nights, every experience, even the frightening ones, becomes holy. Those moments when you wake frozen in silence can become encounters with grace if you let faith replace fear. He said the key is preparation. How you end your day determines how your spirit begins its journey. Go to sleep in anger, and you'll travel through shadows. Go to sleep in gratitude, and you'll rise surrounded by light. The soul responds to vibration more than words, and the vibration of love always finds its way back to God. In one of his readings, Cayce was asked why some people see dark figures during these episodes. He explained that the human mind, when half awake, half asleep, interprets energy as form. Negative thought patterns can shape that energy into fearful images. But he also said that if, in that moment, a person prays, the image fades. The light of prayer transforms perception. The presence you thought was evil becomes peace. This isn't fantasy. It's spiritual law. Darkness has no substance of its own. It exists only where light is absent. So when you remember the divine, you restore the balance instantly. Your consciousness creates the atmosphere around you, even in paralysis. The question isn't, why can't I move? But, what is my soul trying to show me? Cayce urged people to see sleep not as a void, but as sacred communion. Every night, the soul visits dimensions that the waking mind cannot grasp. We learn, we heal, we receive impressions that later surface as intuition or sudden understanding. He said that dreams are messages from the higher self, the part of us that remains aware of God. Sleep paralysis, then, is not a curse, but a reminder that we are spiritual beings temporarily confined to flesh. When you awaken and cannot move, it's your soul whispering, "You are more than this body." That's not something to fear. That's the deepest truth of existence. If these words resonate with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Help us spread Cayce's wisdom to those who are searching for answers in the dark. Share your story in the comments. Your testimony could bring light to someone still afraid of the night. Together, we can turn fear into faith, paralysis into prayer, and sleepless nights into moments of divine connection. Because as Cayce said, the spirit is never bound. Only the mind believes it is. When dawn comes, most people forget the mystery that just passed. They rush into their routines, never realizing that, in the stillness of the night, they brushed against eternity. Cayce said that if we learned to remember what our souls do while the body sleeps, humanity would lose its fear of death forever. Because we would know that consciousness doesn't end, it expands. The paralysis we dread is only the body's reminder that something sacred just occurred. It's a threshold moment when heaven touches earth and the eternal self returns home for another day. But only those who are spiritually awake recognize it for what it is. He warned that as the world grows louder, people will become more spiritually deaf. More will experience these disturbances at night because their souls are starving for silence, for God, for meaning. Our modern lives are filled with noise, screens, and distraction. The soul tries to speak, but we no longer listen, so it finds moments like these, when the body is frozen and the world is quiet, to remind us that the unseen still exists. What you feel in that immovable moment is not punishment, it's a call. A divine whisper saying, "Return to me." When you surrender to that, the fear dissolves, and the peace of Christ fills the room like light breaking through thick curtains. So tonight, before you close your eyes, remember this: you are not falling into darkness, you are returning to the source. Breathe deeply, forgive those who hurt you, and speak to God as to a friend. Tell him you are ready to see with new eyes. Because when your soul travels, it carries the fragrance of your faith, and when it returns, it brings that same fragrance back into your waking life. That's how true transformation happens, not through fear, but through remembrance. When you awaken in stillness, unable to move, do not fight it. Let it be holy. Let it remind you that your spirit is eternal, your body is temporary, and your faith is the bridge between them. Every soul will one day make that journey permanently, leaving the body behind. But Cayce's message was clear. If you walk with God now, even death will feel like waking from a dream. So the next time you find yourself paralyzed in the night, don't panic. Pray. Whisper his name, because in that moment, heaven is closer than you think. If this message touched your heart, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs peace tonight. And tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced this strange awakening between worlds? I'll read your story and mark it with a heart, because every testimony here helps another soul find faith in the dark. Remember, even in paralysis, the spirit moves. Even in silence, God speaks. Have you ever walked into a room and felt drained, as if someone had quietly stolen your peace? Edgar Cayce warned that this invisible exchange of energy is real and far more dangerous than most people think. He said that every thought, every emotion, and every vibration around us can attach to our aura like dust to glass. And if we're not spiritually awake, we start carrying pain, anger, and sadness that were never ours to begin with. This is how we lose our light. This is how we let darkness feed on our spirit without even realizing it. Cayce explained that negative energy doesn't simply appear. It is absorbed through fear, gossip, resentment, and pity disguised as empathy. The moment you open your heart without discernment, you also open the door for invisible forces that live off your weakness. So the question is, how much of what you feel actually belongs to you? Leave a comment below if you've ever sensed someone draining your energy. I'll read your story and mark it with a heart, because today we're going to learn how to stop absorbing negative energy once and for all. Edgar Cayce said that every human being is like a radio station, constantly sending and receiving frequencies. Thoughts are not confined to the mind. They are living energies that travel through invisible channels, influencing every soul that is open enough to receive them. This means that the energy around you, whether from a co-worker, a family member, or a stranger passing by, can enter your spiritual field and begin to alter your emotions, your faith, and even your health. Cayce explained that negative energy isn't evil by nature. It is simply energy misused, directed by fear instead of love, by anger instead of peace. When you absorb that energy, you unknowingly invite those vibrations to dwell within you, shaping your perception of the world and dimming your connection with God. The danger isn't only in what you see or hear, but in what you feel without understanding. Because once those vibrations settle in your heart, you start fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. He taught that protection begins not in the body, but in the spirit. When you align your thoughts with divine truth, When your heart remains steady in faith, no darkness can attach itself to you. But when you live distracted, anxious, or angry, your energy field weakens, leaving openings that invite confusion and despair. Cayce warned that this is why so many people feel constantly tired, burdened, or lost. They are carrying the invisible weight of other souls' struggles. You might think your sadness is yours, but often it is simply energy borrowed from someone else's pain. And until you return it to God, it will stay within you. The only way to stop absorbing that darkness is to raise your vibration through prayer, gratitude, and forgiveness. Those are not cliches, they are spiritual laws as real as gravity. Cayce said, "The mind is the builder. Whatever you think, you create. When you focus on fear, you attract it. When you hold on to resentment, you invite more of it. But when you choose peace, even in silence, your energy field becomes a mirror of the divine. It reflects light so strongly that no shadow can linger near you." The reason Jesus told us to love even our enemies is not only moral, it is vibrational. Love neutralizes all negative energy. Every act of compassion, every moment of prayer rebuilds your spiritual shield. That is what Cayce meant when he said that the aura of a loving soul glows like sunlight. And that light, once awakened, can change the entire atmosphere of a room. So ask yourself right now, what energy are you carrying that isn't yours? What thoughts are you hosting that come from someone else's fear? This is not about superstition, it is about awareness. Cayce wanted people to understand that you are never a victim of energy. You are a channel of it. You have the power to choose what flows through you. Each time you forgive, you cleanse your aura. Each time you pray, you fortify your shield. Each time you bless someone, even in silence, you return darkness to light. And if you've ever felt drained after being around certain people, remember, your soul is sensitive because it was designed to heal others, not to absorb their pain. Take a moment right now, before continuing, to reflect. If this message is speaking to you, like this video and subscribe, so we can spread Cayce's message to more souls who need light. And tell me in the comments how you felt the energy of others affecting your life. I'll read every story and respond with a heart. Cayce explained that spiritual protection is not something you put on once, it's something you live. He said that the human aura reacts instantly to the state of the soul. When you pray, it expands. When you doubt, it contracts. When you love, it shines. And when you hate, it darkens. This constant motion is what determines the type of energy you attract. That is why he urged people to examine their thoughts as carefully as they choose the food they eat, because every thought carries nutrition or poison for the spirit. You cannot surround yourself with gossip, judgment, and fear and still expect to walk in light. The aura is honest. It reflects who you are in secret, not who you pretend to be in public. He said that negative energy attaches itself most easily to those who live without spiritual discipline. When you go days without prayer, when you lose gratitude, when you live only reacting to the world, your defenses fall. That's when the heavy energies of others can slip in unnoticed. Cayce taught that the first symptom of this invasion is confusion. You start doubting yourself, doubting God, and questioning your worth. You wake up feeling tired, even after sleeping. You lose joy in things that once inspired you. These are not random moods, they are signs that you've been carrying what isn't yours. The remedy, however, is not complicated. It begins with one sincere decision, to return to God what never belonged to you. Cayce described prayer as the most powerful cleansing force on earth. Not the kind of prayer that begs, but the one that aligns. He said that when you pray from gratitude instead of fear, the energy of God begins to flow through you like living light, burning away all that is foreign to your soul. Many people, he said, confuse empathy with sacrifice. They think that to help others they must feel their pain. But that is not compassion, it is contamination. True compassion is to stand so firmly in your light that others find healing simply by being near you. When Jesus healed the sick, he didn't absorb their darkness, he illuminated it. The power of light is not to fight darkness, but to reveal it for what it is, an illusion. You can do the same. When you walk into a room filled with tension, you can choose to bring peace instead of absorbing chaos. When someone speaks in anger, you can choose to respond in calm instead of reflecting the same vibration. Every time you choose peace, your spirit grows stronger, your aura becomes brighter, and negative energy loses its hold. Cayce called this spiritual transmutation, turning the energy of darkness into the energy of love. And every human being is capable of it. The key is awareness. You must learn to recognize what belongs to you and what doesn't. He suggested a simple daily practice. Before you sleep, close your eyes and silently repeat, "Father, cleanse me from all vibrations that are not of your light. Let me rest in your peace and awaken renewed." He said that even a few moments of sincere connection with God can restore the soul faster than hours of rest without faith. Because when you align your energy with divine truth, no negative vibration can survive. It simply dissolves in the presence of light. Cayce often said that the greatest battle between light and darkness happens not in the world, but inside the human mind. The thoughts you entertain become the energy you emit, and the energy you emit becomes the reality you experience. When you constantly dwell on pain, you create a magnetic field that draws more of it. But when you choose faith, you invite divine order to rearrange your circumstances. That is why Jesus said, "According to your faith, be it unto you." Faith is not blind hope. It is energy aligned with divine will. Cayce urged people to make faith their daily vibration, not an occasional refuge. Because the moment your faith wavers, negative energies sense the opening. They enter through fear, guilt, or anger, disguising themselves as logic, convincing you that peace is unrealistic, that goodness is naive, that love is weakness. But those are lies whispered by the lower vibrations trying to survive within you. When you stop feeding those thoughts, they lose their power. Cayce said that meditation and silence are weapons of the soul. Through silence, you stop reacting and start perceiving. You begin to separate what is yours from what was imposed upon you. He described the aura as a mirror of your relationship with God. When you neglect that connection, your reflection fades. But when you return to prayer, light begins to fill every cell of your being. Even your body starts to respond. Your breath deepens, your pulse slows, your nervous system relaxes. These are not coincidences. They are the physical proof of spiritual harmony. He explained that the love of God is not a concept, but a frequency that heals everything it touches. When you carry resentment, you block that frequency. When you forgive, you open the channel. That is why Cayce said that forgiveness is not for others. It is for your soul's survival. You cannot rise in vibration while holding on to judgment. The energy of condemnation locks you in the same darkness you condemn. But when you forgive, you break the chain that ties you to that vibration. Forgiveness is spiritual alchemy. It transforms pain into wisdom. Cayce's readings also warned about the subtle forms of energy theft, how people unconsciously drain others through constant complaints, self-pity, or manipulation. He didn't tell us to avoid those people completely, but to strengthen our connection with God before and after being around them. He said, "Surround yourself with the light of Christ." That phrase was not symbolic, it was literal. He believed that through focused prayer and visualization, anyone could form a spiritual armor that negative energies could not penetrate. Picture yourself surrounded by a soft golden light, expanding with every breath. Imagine that light coming directly from the source of all creation. This is not imagination, it is intention, and intention shapes vibration. Before continuing, take a deep breath. If these words have awakened something in you, if you feel the presence of peace returning, like this video, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember who they are, a child of divine light, not a sponge for the world's pain. Leave a comment below with the phrase, "I choose light," so I know you're walking this path with us. Cayce taught that the universe is made of patterns, and your soul vibrates according to the pattern of your dominant thoughts. If you constantly think in fear, your pattern resonates with fear. If you think in faith, your pattern aligns with divine order. That is why he warned that the greatest protection isn't isolation, but transformation. You cannot escape negative energy by hiding from the world. You overcome it by becoming the light that transforms it. Every time you choose patience over anger, kindness over pride, or truth over gossip, you shift the frequency of your life. Slowly, the people around you begin to change too. because your vibration silently influences theirs. This is how one awakened soul can elevate an entire household. You don't need to preach. Your presence does the work. Cayce said that light is contagious, and when it comes from a heart aligned with God, no darkness can withstand it for long. He explained that our reactions reveal our spiritual condition. When someone insults you and you feel wounded, it means their words found a resonance within you. But when you've purified your heart, their energy finds no place to land. It simply passes through, like wind through open hands. This is not emotional coldness, it is spiritual mastery. Jesus showed this when he faced betrayal, mockery, and suffering, yet responded only with love. That wasn't weakness, it was the purest form of strength. Cayce said that Christ consciousness is the highest vibration the human soul can achieve. And the closer you move toward it, the less external energy can control you. Because in that state, you no longer absorb energy, you emit it. You become a living conduit of divine light. He believed that the ultimate purpose of every lifetime is to learn how to love without losing yourself. Many people think spiritual growth means escaping from the world, but Cayce clarified that true evolution happens in the midst of life's storms. You grow not by avoiding pain, but by transforming it. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every disappointment carries a hidden opportunity to strengthen your alignment with God. The more you face darkness with faith, the brighter your soul becomes. That is why those who suffer often radiate wisdom. They've learned how to turn pain into compassion. Cayce said that even illness can be a form of spiritual cleansing, pushing you to release what no longer serves your divine pattern. He also reminded us that energy flows where attention goes. When you constantly talk about negativity, even to warn others, you feed it. But when you speak of light, you multiply it. So begin to speak blessings more than complaints. Speak peace more than worry. Each word carries frequency, and each frequency returns to its source. That means every word you say builds or weakens your protection. If you want your life to change, begin with the vibration of your speech. Replace "I can't" with "God will guide me." Replace "I'm tired" with "I am being renewed." These aren't just affirmations, they're keys that open spiritual doors. When you begin to live with this awareness, you realize how many years were spent fighting battles that weren't yours. The weight you carried in your chest, the sadness you couldn't explain, the sudden exhaustion after certain conversations, Cayce revealed that none of it was random. It was your spirit absorbing the vibrations of a world still asleep. But you don't have to live that way anymore. God never designed your soul to be a container for darkness. He designed it to be a vessel of light. That is why Jesus said, "Let your light shine before men." Light isn't a metaphor. It's an energy emitted by a heart in harmony with the divine. When you align yourself with God, you don't repel darkness by effort, you simply outshine it. Cayce explained that divine light doesn't just protect, it transforms. It reaches into the roots of fear, dissolving it until only peace remains. But this transformation requires honesty. You must face your own shadows. The bitterness you hide behind polite smiles, the silent envy that corrodes your gratitude, the anger disguised as righteousness. Every unhealed emotion within you acts as a doorway for lower vibrations. That's why purification begins not with ritual, but with truth. When you admit your pain before God, His light can enter. When you deny it, darkness remains. Cayce said that confession is not about guilt, it's about alignment. It's the act of bringing your hidden energy back into divine order. He also taught that Christ was the perfect model of energetic mastery. Jesus could walk among the possessed, the sick, the corrupt, and remain untouched, not because darkness didn't surround him, but because none of it could enter his vibration. His consciousness was pure alignment with the Father. Cayce urged everyone to strive toward that state. He called it the Christ pattern, the original design of the soul. You may not reach perfection in this lifetime, but each step toward it weakens the grip of negativity. Every prayer, every act of forgiveness, every moment of faith shifts you closer to that divine frequency. And perhaps that's what this moment is truly about. You didn't find this message by accident. Your soul was guided here because it's ready to stop absorbing pain and start radiating light. Ready to remember that you were never meant to carry the world's darkness. You were meant to heal it through love. Cayce believed that when even one person chooses the vibration of love, angels draw near. Heaven takes notice. Because love is the highest form of energy, and when it flows through you, it transforms everything it touches. So, if you feel something awakening in your heart right now, if you sense that quiet warmth of truth rising within, hold on to it. That's God reminding you who you are. Before you leave, like this video, subscribe and share it with someone who needs this message today. Leave a comment with the words, "I walk in divine light," and together we'll fill this world with a frequency no darkness can endure. Remember, you are not here to absorb pain, you are here to transform it. Cayce ended many of his readings with the same reminder: keep your mind stayed in Him. That single sentence holds the key to everything. Because where the mind dwells, energy follows. If your thoughts live in fear, your spirit contracts. If your thoughts live in God, your spirit expands. Protection, then, is not about walls or rituals, it is about focus. When your heart and mind are fixed on divine truth, you are surrounded by light stronger than any force in this world. That light does not isolate you from others. It allows you to move through life without being poisoned by it. You still feel compassion. You still love deeply. But you no longer confuse empathy with absorption. You recognize pain without making it yours. You help without losing your strength. That is spiritual maturity, and that is the freedom Cayce wanted every soul to experience. He often said that the spirit within you is older than your body, wiser than your fears, and connected to the same source that shaped the stars. Every time you pray, you awaken that memory. You remember that you are not a victim of energy. You are its master when aligned with God. The more you practice stillness, gratitude, and forgiveness, the more you begin to live in that divine rhythm. You start noticing how chaos no longer controls you. You feel peace even in the storm, joy even in the struggle, and clarity even in confusion. That's how you know you've stopped absorbing and started transforming, because light doesn't react, it reveals. So the next time you sense darkness approaching, don't run, don't fight, don't fear. Just breathe and say silently, "Father, let your light flow through me." Feel it expanding from your chest, reaching outward like ripples of warmth, surrounding every thought, every person, every space you touch. That prayer alone can change the energy of an entire room. Cayce said that when a soul stands in alignment with Christ, the forces of darkness cannot even approach, not because they are destroyed, but because they are dissolved, overcome by the radiance of divine order. Remember this: God placed His power within you not to hide from the world, but to heal it. Every smile, every prayer, every act of kindness releases light that travels far beyond what you can see. You are never alone in this mission. The moment you choose love over fear, heaven joins you. Angels move where faith is spoken, and every time you choose light, the world becomes a little brighter. So keep walking in that light, protect your peace, guard your thoughts. And above all, stay close to God, for His presence is your true armor. If this message touched you, like this video, subscribe, and share it so more hearts can awaken to the truth Cayce revealed, that no soul is powerless, and no darkness can survive where faith lives. Leave a comment below with the words, "I choose God's light," so we know this flame continues to spread. Because the moment you stop absorbing and start radiating, the world begins to heal. There are mysteries within the soul that words were never meant to touch. They live in silence, in that tender space between breath and prayer, where only God listens. Edgar Cayce often reminded us that the soul carries its own language, a vibration beyond speech where truth and grace meet. And he warned that not every truth should be spoken, for words can scatter what spirit intends to sanctify. Some things are not to be hidden out of fear, but to be guarded out of reverence. Cayce was not a prophet of secrecy. He was a servant of Christ. He lived as a man of quiet faith, reading scripture daily, praying before every healing, and asking that each revelation be used for good alone. His gift was not for display. It was a form of service. Through him flowed insights about the eternal nature of the soul, the continuity of life, and the power of thought to shape reality. But woven through all of his readings was one recurring truth. Spiritual power must be held with humility, for its misuse can darken the very light it reveals. He often said that silence is a form of strength and discretion, a form of love. For there are experiences of the soul, encounters with the divine, visions of the eternal, that cannot be translated without distortion. To speak them too soon, or to those not ready to receive them, is to cast pearls before misunderstanding. Even Christ, who was truth made flesh, spoke in parables, so that those with ears to hear might awaken in their own time. And so Cayce, reflecting the words of Christ, gently taught that there are sacred things never to be spoken without discernment. They are not forbidden but consecrated. They belong to that inner altar where the soul meets its Creator. These 7 things are not a list of secrets to be feared, but lessons in spiritual lore, each revealing how the divine works within us in stillness, shaping faith through silence. The first of these is the deepest, your personal encounter with God. When the soul touches the infinite, when prayer becomes presence, when peace fills every shadow, that moment is holy beyond speech. To talk of it too freely is to invite misunderstanding from those who have not yet felt such light. It is not pride that restrains the tongue, but reverence. For that which is sacred cannot be contained by language. Cayce once said that the soul's awakening is like a dawn within the heart. It begins in quietness, in the unseen stirring of light before the world takes notice. If we rush to describe it, we may lose its depth. The ego wishes to explain, but the spirit only wishes to live it. So the first thing one should never tell anyone is the full measure of one's encounter with God. Keep it in the silence of gratitude. Let it transform you from within until your life itself becomes the testimony. For every divine experience has its season. It must be absorbed, understood, and anchored before it can be shared. Christ himself told his disciples that there were many things they could not yet bear to hear. Truth matures within us. The seed must remain hidden beneath the soil until the sun calls it forth. And so, in your own journey, protect what is sacred. Speak less of the miracle and more of the humility it brings. Let others see the fruit of your communion, not the words of it. When light is real, it shines without proclamation. The second thing one should never tell anyone is the full story of their inner battles, the silent wars between faith and doubt, between spirit and the shadows that cling to the human heart. Edgar Cayce understood that every soul on earth walks through its own valley of testing. These are not punishments but opportunities for growth, moments when God refines the gold within the soul through the fires of experience. Cayce saw that speaking too openly about these spiritual struggles can weaken their power to heal. When we expose them before they are transmuted into wisdom, we invite the opinions of others to shape what should be guided only by God. There is a sacred privacy in suffering, not secrecy born of shame, but a hidden work of grace. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane withdrew from his disciples to pray alone. He invited their presence, but his true communion was with the Father. His anguish was not for display, but for transformation. Cayce's readings taught that the soul's greatest growth occurs when the heart learns to surrender its battles to divine love. Yet that surrender often happens in silence. To speak of one's pain too soon is to step away from the altar before the healing is complete. There are moments when you must let the Holy Spirit finish its work in secret, for others cannot yet understand the language of your tears. This does not mean that we must suffer alone, nor that confession is wrong. It means that discernment is sacred. Share your pain only with those who carry light, who will not judge or feed your wounds but help you see their meaning. Cayce reminded that in the silence of self may be found the voice of God. When we fall quiet before him, the struggle begins to reveal its lesson, and the lesson becomes peace. The third thing one should never tell anyone is the full vision of one's divine purpose before it is ready to be lived. Every soul was born with a calling, a reason for being that transcends circumstance and time. But divine purpose unfolds like dawn. It cannot be forced or hurried. When we speak of it too early, before faith has matured into strength, we expose it to misunderstanding, envy, or doubt, energies that can cloud what was given in purity. Cayce explained that the pattern of purpose is held in the mind of God, revealed piece by piece through prayer, service, and patience. It is like a melody we learn to hear more clearly as we grow closer to Him. When we announce our mission prematurely, we risk confusing the instrument for the song, the ego for the soul. The world is quick to question what it cannot yet see, and such questioning can shake the tender roots of faith. Christ's life offers the perfect reflection of this law. For 30 years, He lived quietly, hidden within the rhythm of ordinary days, before the time of His ministry arrived. His purpose was known in heaven, but revealed on earth only when it was ready to serve in full power. If the Son of God Himself embraced silence before revelation, how much more should we guard the seeds of our destiny until they bloom by God's design? Cayce once said that what we dwell upon becomes our reality. Purpose, then, must be protected within thought and nourished through action, not speech. When we live in tune with divine will, our calling reveals itself naturally. No announcement is needed. The life itself becomes the message. So let your purpose grow in silence. Pray for clarity, not attention. Work quietly, faithfully, joyfully, and when the time is right, your path will open. Not because you told the world what you would do, but because God's light will make it known through the goodness of your deeds. The fourth thing one should never tell anyone is the secret intention of the heart before it has been purified through prayer. Edgar Cayce often said that every thought is creative, every desire, every quiet hope carries the power to shape reality. But before an intention is ready to live in the world, it must first be refined by the Spirit. The heart left to itself can be divided, part longing for divine purpose, part yearning for recognition. The soul must learn to separate light from shadow, to align will with love before intention becomes sacred. Jesus taught this truth in His Sermon on the Mount when He said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." The room He spoke of is not only a place, it is the inner sanctuary of the heart. When you bring your intentions there, they are no longer shaped by human will, but by divine harmony. To speak them too soon is to let them be touched by the expectations and energies of others, which can distort what was meant to be pure. Cayce described this process as spiritual attunement. Intention, he said, is the blueprint of the soul's creative force. When it vibrates with love, it attracts what is good and life-giving. When it is born of pride or fear, it builds walls instead of bridges. To reveal an intention before its refinement is like showing an unfinished painting to those who cannot yet see its vision. Their reactions can alter your perception and dull your faith. Christ's example was one of holy restraint. His works flowed from a perfect unity with the Father's will, not from human desire for acknowledgement. He healed, forgave, and served without announcing His plans or seeking approval. His intention was pure because it was surrendered. So too must ours be tested in silence until it beats in rhythm with the divine heart. The fifth thing one should never tell anyone is the full measure of whom they have forgiven. For forgiveness, Cayce said, is the highest act of the soul, the moment when human love becomes divine. To forgive is to release another from judgment and oneself from bondage. But when we speak too soon of our forgiveness, we risk turning it into a statement of virtue rather than an act of grace. Forgiveness is not something we perform for others to witness. It is a secret exchange between the soul and God. It is saying, without words, I choose love instead of resentment. I choose peace instead of pride. Christ's greatest forgiveness was whispered, not proclaimed. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He offered mercy without explanation, compassion without recognition. Cayce saw in this the essence of spiritual maturity, that true forgiveness carries no need to be seen. It heals not through proclamation, but through vibration. When we silently forgive, we set in motion a wave of energy that heals both souls involved. To speak of it too often can reawaken the memory of injury, anchoring us again to the pain we had released. To forgive is to let God rewrite the story. It is the surrender of justice into the hands of divine mercy. In silence, forgiveness becomes real. In words, it can too easily become performance. Thus, Cayce urged all who sought peace to live forgiveness rather than declare it. Let it be known, not by what you say, but by the gentleness in your presence, the calm in your eyes, the compassion in your actions. When intention and forgiveness dwell together in silence, they form a bridge between heaven and earth. For the soul that purifies its motives and releases its judgments becomes a vessel of pure light. What flows through such a soul is not ambition, not pride, not the need to be right, but love. And love is the only force in the universe that requires no explanation. The sixth sacred thing one should never tell anyone is the conversation of the soul with God. There is a depth of communion that no word can carry, a silence where heaven and earth meet. Edgar Cayce often spoke of prayer as the tuning of the soul to the infinite. It is not a request, but a relationship, a vibration between the created and the creator. In that stillness, the soul remembers where it came from. When God speaks, it is rarely with sound. It comes as a peace that passes understanding, a whisper in the spirit that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Such moments are too holy to be shared lightly. To explain them is to reduce them. To parade them is to profane them. These divine intimacies are not proofs of holiness, but invitations to humility. Cayce knew that the voice of God is most often heard by those who listen without pride. The danger of sharing these encounters too freely lies not only in misunderstanding but in vanity. For the ego, ever subtle, seeks to claim what belongs only to grace. To keep one's communion private is to acknowledge that the conversation does not belong to the world. It belongs to eternity. Christ himself gave us this example. Though he walked among thousands, he prayed in solitude. At dawn, he would leave the crowds to commune with the Father in secret. And when his disciples asked how they should pray, he told them to enter their inner chamber, close the door, and pray unseen. For God is not moved by the noise of words, but by the sincerity of the heart. Cayce's readings echoed this divine principle. The most powerful prayer is silent, and the most sacred revelation is between you and God alone. When the soul prays in truth, it becomes light. When it seeks to boast of its holiness, it becomes shadow. Thus the soul must protect its communion as one would protect a flame from the wind. The more quietly it burns, the brighter it becomes. The seventh and final thing one should never tell anyone is the full nature of their dreams, those spiritual messages that come through the veil of night. Cayce called dreams the language of the soul, a bridge between the conscious mind and the eternal self. In them, God speaks through symbol and emotion, revealing guidance, healing, and memory. Yet he warned that dreams are not meant for public display. They are deeply personal communications between the soul and the divine. When we share a dream before its meaning has ripened, we may distort its message. Others may interpret it through the lens of fear, doubt, or worldly logic, pulling the vision away from its higher truth. Cayce advised those who dreamed vividly to record them, pray over them, and let the Spirit reveal their meaning in time. Dreams are seeds of destiny. They unfold as we live in harmony with their essence. Christ's own destiny was known to him in divine revelation, yet he did not speak of it before its hour. Every prophecy, every symbol, every word from the Father found fulfillment only when time and purpose met. So it is with our dreams. They are promises in motion, waiting for our obedience to make them real. To guard them in silence is to honor their sacred origin. Cayce believed that dreams hold fragments of eternity, memories from other lifetimes, messages of the higher self, or echoes of God's teaching. But he also taught that these truths must be approached with reverence. They are not trophies of mysticism. They are tools for transformation. When we treat them as sacred, they guide us. When we expose them carelessly, they lose their power. Silence, again, becomes the guardian of truth. For what is holy cannot be forced. It must be received, lived, and expressed through the gentle rhythm of a life attuned to love. In this way, our dreams, our prayers, and our deepest experiences become one continuous dialogue with the divine, unspoken but eternally heard. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence itself becomes prayer, when words fall away and what remains is presence, the still knowing that God is near. Edgar Cayce called this the quiet realization of oneness. It is not something we can explain, but something we become. For when the soul surrenders its need to speak, to prove or to be understood, it enters the harmony of heaven. In that harmony, everything the soul has guarded, the secret encounters with God, the silent battles of the heart, the unseen purpose, the purified intention, the quiet forgiveness, the hidden prayer, the unspoken dream, all merge into one vibration: love. And love, as Christ showed us, is the language of eternity. It needs no explanation, it simply is. Cayce often said that God is love, and those who dwell in love dwell in God. But love, in its highest form, is not emotion. It is vibration, the living essence of the Creator moving through us. To live in that vibration is to become transparent, allowing divine light to pass through without distortion. The soul that learns to hold silence learns to hold this light. It no longer seeks to be known, only to be true. Christ's life was the perfect mirror of this truth. He spoke when the Father guided him, remained silent when words could not serve, and loved without condition. Even in silence before Pilate, even on the cross, his being radiated forgiveness and peace. That is the power of divine restraint, to speak only through presence, to let the Spirit, not the ego, bear witness. Cayce taught that the measure of spiritual maturity is not how much one knows, but how one lives what is known. The wise soul becomes gentle, the enlightened become humble. For the closer we draw to God, the less we need to explain. Understanding replaces argument, compassion replaces judgment, and silence becomes the sanctuary where love reigns. The world may never understand such quiet strength. It celebrates noise, achievement, visibility. But the soul that walks with God moves differently, not in haste but in harmony, not in self-promotion but in service. Its peace becomes its message, its joy becomes its testimony, its silence becomes its song. There is power in this simplicity, to live truth rather than speak it, to forgive rather than announce it, to love without condition, and to trust the unseen workings of grace. In one of his readings, Cayce said, "Let your life be a prayer, and your prayer be your life." This is the essence of all he taught, that spirituality is not something we talk about, but something we embody. And when we embody it, everything changes. The walls of separation fall. The soul remembers its eternal home. Christ's love becomes not a doctrine, but a living current within us, guiding each step, transforming every shadow into light. What was once hidden is revealed, not by our words, but by the quiet radiance of a life attuned to God. So let your silence speak. Let your actions preach the gospel your words cannot carry. Protect what is sacred, but let its light shine through your kindness, your patience, your peace. For those who live in truth never need to declare it, they become it. And in their presence, others remember the God within themselves. This is the purpose of silence, not secrecy but revelation, not withdrawal but illumination. In stillness, the soul finds its source. In love, it finds its destiny. When the soul learns to live in quiet reverence, every breath becomes a prayer and every moment a conversation with God. In that sacred stillness, you begin to understand what Cayce meant when he said that the purpose of life is to know your relationship with the Creator and to manifest it day by day. It is not through grand declarations, but through small acts of love that heaven reveals itself on earth. The 7 things you must never tell anyone are not laws of silence meant to bind you. They are keys to freedom. They teach you how to hold sacred what is divine, how to protect what is pure, how to honor what is still unfolding within you. Each one invites you into a deeper communion with the Spirit, away from noise, away from comparison, away from the illusion that holiness must be seen to be real. In your quiet communion, you begin to see that all life is prayer. The sunrise over still water, the hand that forgives, the tear that falls unseen, all are part of the same rhythm of grace. Cayce reminded us that our souls are eternal travelers, gathering light through every experience, every kindness, every moment of surrender. When you stop speaking long enough to listen, you can hear the echo of eternity within your own heartbeat. Christ did not seek recognition. He sought reunion, between God and humanity, between heaven and earth, between love and those who had forgotten it. His every word, his every silence was a bridge. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he revealed the ultimate truth. The divine is not found in distant stars or sacred buildings, but in the quiet depths of your own being. Cayce's life was a testament to this same truth. He never sought fame, yet his words reached millions. He never demanded belief, only encouraged faith. Through his readings, he reminded each soul that the Christ within is the hope of glory, that God does not live outside us, but through us, as light through glass, and that light grows brightest when the glass is clear, when ego dissolves into love. In the end, everything that should not be spoken is not forbidden. It is simply too beautiful for words. It must be lived. For how can one explain the taste of peace, the sound of forgiveness, the feeling of being held by unseen hands? Such truths can only be known through being. So, walk gently. Let your heart be your altar, your silence your prayer, your kindness your offering. Protect what is sacred not by hiding it, but by living it so purely that the world cannot help but feel its presence. Let your life whisper what your tongue cannot say, that God is real, that love redeems, that every soul is a spark of the eternal flame. And when you reach the quiet at the end of the day, when all words have fallen away, listen. Beneath the thoughts, beneath the breath, you will hear it, the same voice that spoke to prophets, to healers, to saints. You are my beloved. In you, I am well pleased. That is the truth Edgar Cayce lived and Christ embodied. It is the truth that never needs to be spoken, only remembered. And when you remember it, you will no longer ask what must be shared or what must be kept. For you will understand that all that matters is love, and love, when real, speaks for itself. So keep your sacred things not in fear, but in faith. Keep your silence not in hiding, but in holiness. Let the world see through your gentleness what God has written in your soul. And one day, when words are no longer needed, you will find yourself standing in perfect stillness, where all mysteries are known and all hearts are one in Christ.